moved into Croatia. Laval Nugent died in Basilevo on the 22nd of August, 1862. His body was transferred from Basilevo into the tomb of Peace of Heroes in Tersat, next to the sarcophagus of his wife, where he rested in peace for almost a century. After Laval's death, only his son Arthur stayed in Croatia, and because of the extreme expenditures, he lost all of the lands except for Basilevo and Tersat. He too wanted to become a Croatian viceroy and spent most of his life in Zagreb. He died childless in 1897 in Basilevo. His son Albert left Croatia for good. He spent most of his life in Naples and died in London in 1896. His extramarital daughter Anna Nugent returned to Croatia and took over the lands of Basilevo and Tersat. After selling Basilevo, she was the last owner of Tersat and gave it a ghostly magical atmosphere of a cursed city. Count Laval Nugent was one of the key figures in the creation of a Croatian nation, as we intend it in modern times. He was its strongest political power and its unrealized myth. However, very few people were aware of his power. Nevertheless, today there remains enough traces from which we can recognize his greatness and power. One of those traces is a large portrait in the Croatian Historical Museum in Zagreb, in which he is presented as a Knight of the Order of the Golden Fleece. This decoration was also worn by members of the Habsburg family and only rare members of high nobility. In addition, the museum also contains a plaster bust of Laval Nugent, created by the famous sculptor Dominic Frankopan. There are a few other portraits of Laval and a portrait of his son Albert. However, the most interesting piece is the genealogy records of the Nugent family. Composed in Dublin by an Austrian expert of coats of arms, it was commissioned by Laval's wife, Duchess Giovanna Roari Sforza. The leather-bound book contains 125 pages with illustrations and descriptions of the family coats of arms, 85 family branches on the female and male side, and a description of their ties to the numerous ruling houses of Europe. Not far from the museum, near the stone gate, still stands Nugent's house. On one part of the house, above the stone gate, there is a British line and a chain resting beneath the line, which in the past was placed above the upper side of the entrance of Gornji Grad, the upper town. According to legend, the chain originates from Admiral Nelson's ship in the Battle of Aboukir, 1798, where Nelson defeated the French fleet thanks to a maneuver in which he used the ship's anchors. In memory of the event, he gave the anchor's chain to his mistress, Lady Hamilton, who then placed it in front of her villa in Naples. As the commander of the Naples army, Laval obtained the chain in a way which is still not documented. The chain is now part of the memorial fence in Zagreb. Another significant part of the collection of Count Nugent is preserved in the Archaeological Museum in Zagreb. Marshal Nugent's collection was well known all throughout Europe in his time, and a contemporary chronicle writer of the time reported that museums in Vienna and Budapest competed for acquisition of the collection. This fact proves its importance in Nugent's time. The collection contains over 1,000 antique stone monuments and a few hundred Greek vases, which are the central part of today's antique collection at the Archaeological Museum in Zagreb. Already in the year 1894, the collection represented a great acquisition. Its monuments can be grouped into several parts. One group containing cult monuments, statues of deities, etc., of which special attention is drawn to a group which was supposed to be once a group of its own, with Apollo, Dionysus, and Calliope. However, the collection also contains a head, presumably from Prenestino, one of the well-known Euritratian sites, and is the oldest stone monument in possession of the Archaeological Museum in Zagreb. There are portraits, as well as fragments of antique sarcophagi, which represent the highest of Roman art at the time. These are perhaps the most significant pieces of the collection. As for today's museum, of the greatest significance is a collection of Greek vases, as it represents a larger part of the entire collection, which numbers 1,500 pieces contained in the museum. From an artistic point of view, or the appeal it has on visitors, the collection with its exclusive pieces will surely remain the most attractive part of the antique collection at the Archaeological Museum for a long time. The two most important lands of the Nugent family were Brasiljevo and Tersat. Count Laval Nugent reconstructed the castle of Brasiljevo in the Romantic style and filled its interior with one of the most beautiful private art collections of the time. The castle itself is enormous and is composed of several connected buildings, and the local population say that it contains the same number of rooms as the days of the year. The large ballroom, all in wood, is particularly beautiful. In today's remains, we can imagine how beautiful the tall main tower must have been, from which the castle looks like a ship and offers a beautiful view of the surroundings. Arthur Nugent was probably the one to envision the castle as a ship, as he ordered the construction of the central tower and had the wooden ceiling decorated to look like a ship's compass. The central part of the castle is a courtyard, which still contains a stone pedestal with the remains of Nugent's crest, a rooster with the body of a dragon, a work by the sculptor Frankopan. Another basilisk is found on the terrace above the custodian's apartment and a court chapel. However decrepit, the castle Brasiljevo still breathes an atmosphere of Nugent's presence, as the numerous coat of arms built into the facade testify. Tersat was the first in a series of Frankopan family towns bought by Count Laval Nugent, following his bizarre plan. The Marshal, blue-blooded Irish of French descent, had chosen Tersat as his final resting place, above all other castles in Italy, France, England, Spain, and the Habsburg Empire. In the mausoleum of the chapel dedicated to St. Joseph, there were the sarcophagi of Nugent and his wife. Other members of the family were meant to be buried in 8 vertical tombs, according to Celtic tradition, in the space behind the mausoleum. On the terrace in front of the mausoleum, 2 of Frankopan's basilisks are still seen, which in pair used to guard the mausoleum, holding shields in their claws with the coat of arms of Laval Nugent and his wife. But the eccentric count wasn't destined to enjoy his museum, which even a person as great as him wasn't able to finish in time. Nor does he enjoy his final resting place, as he was removed from his own tomb during the restoration of Tersat in the 1960s. His and his wife's sarcophagi were broken down and are now lying like ordinary stone pieces in front of the entrance of the castle. Nevertheless, Count Nugent's remains have never left Tersat. His bones were built into the walls of the Roman tower. Except for the pieces held in the Archaeological Museum of Zagreb, the largest part of the archaeological artifacts from the castle of Tersat have remained in Rijeka. A small part can be found today in the Museum of the city of Rijeka. However, it seems that the largest part of the collection from Tersat, travelling in various ways, ended up in the Maritime and History Museum in Rijeka. In one small corner, there are pieces taken from Tersat, Laval's portrait, furniture, and tableware with his coat of arms, manufactured in his factory. Many other pieces are scattered throughout the museum, such as a beautiful cast iron chandelier, stone monuments, a suit of armour exhibited in the gallery. Of all the pieces found in the museum, particularly valuable are the works of the famous sculptor Canova. From Canova, Laval commissioned 2 of his own busts, one of his wife Giovanna and one of his daughter Beatrix. He commissioned a statue of the infant of St. John from the sculpture as well. There are still many secrets and ambiguities connected with the inheritance of Nugent, particularly concerning the collection of paintings of old masters, which according to preserved descriptions must have been rather impressive. Today, the collection of Nugent family paintings is the most interesting part because it still leaves enough space for new research. Up to now, analysis has shown that the family possessed over 200 Renaissance and Baroque paintings, including the greatest names of Italian painters. In various lists, names such as Leonardo da Vinci, Tizian, Tintoretto, Veronese are mentioned. The most interesting works which should be mentioned are those found in the Maritime Historic Museum. There is The Adoration of the Magi by Giorgione, an early painting known as the Night Painting, and then there is the St. Rocco by Tizian, part of the left wing of the altar which depicts St. Rocco, the Madonna and Child, and St. Anthony. Then there is a very interesting painting by Paolo Veronese, actually a sketch for the Wedding Feast at Cana, one of the non-realized versions, which is darker than the one found in the Louvre. Then there is a piece by Correggio, the Madonna of the Rosary, and a small in Greco done in the style of Correggio. All of the works collected by Nugent were meant to be exhibited in Tersat as a part of his project, Museum Mausoleum, and the largest part is actually taken from two older Italian collections, the collection of the family d'Este from Ferrara and Modena, and the Foscari family of the Venetian Doges. The curators of the Maritime and History Museum in Rijeka do not agree on the previously mentioned assumptions as to the origins of the collection of the Old Masters, and think that they can be attributed to various families, primarily the Teuton family. They think that only some of the paintings could be attributed to Nugent's collection, which would have to be confirmed by research. However, the claim that Nugent's collection truly contained valuable works of art is confirmed by the recent discovery of two paintings by Andrea Medilic. They are two allegorical paintings which have the stamp of Nugent's coat of arms on the backside. Unfortunately, the rest of the paintings don't have this precise mark, so professional research would have to determine which and whose works they are, and if they could have truly belonged to Nugent's collection. In any case, there is no sense in letting them lie in the dark and inaccessible museum depositories, just as Laval Nugent lies in the dark of creation history of the 19th century.